What do you make of the focus in particular of oversight, of board membership, of executive management at this moment?
Well, look, I think something I've learned over a long time in working with boards, it's never been more important, and the importance to have on your board people with all different disciplines. So you just had Mel on earlier talking about the importance of cybersecurity, or those that have regulatory experience, et cetera. So it just goes to show it is a job that everyone really does need to take seriously.
You sit on the board of JPMorgan, of course, one of the only big bank with still the same CEO from the crisis era, with still that management oversight. And I'm interested as to what your take is from a banking perspective of these 3 almost overnight collapses and what this means for the sector in general.
Well, you guys have been reporting on it, and I think there'll be many quarterbacking events taking place after that, and certainly from a regulatory side, obviously $200 billion, and what changes as a result of that. A bank that size versus the systemically important banks, management decisions, you just alluded to that. And then I think it'll be interesting, the discussion about, the role technology played, and whether it was in the quick dispersion of facts and things that were not true. Some of the same technology that really Silicon Valley Bank brought to life. And then I think at the end of the day, it says a lot about really what we all have to do now with the venture cap community. And I think it's going to make difficult for some parts of VC world that it was already difficult for, like women-backed VCs, right? Which was, it's only maybe 2 to 3% of the whole community. Now it's even less. And what this will mean is more conservative, and people then tend to do business with who they know. And so networks typically then have less women in them. So I think there'll be unintended consequences like that to come too.
It's interesting you bring that up. 24 hours ago, we had someone on saying that, but also pointing out that for many founders, diverse founders from minority groups, women, it was Silicon Valley Bank that would often write the first check. You had a storied career at IBM. You know the world of technology. Do you have any experience of working with SVB and what their role was in the Valley?
Well, certainly worked with many and bought many companies, right, that they had certainly helped launch. And by the way, there are other VC firms. I mean, another one, a great one, Rethink, is one that invests in just women, the largest woman-owned VC firm in this country, in women-only investments. So I think, my experience has been positive in that there have been many, many good companies that we acquired.
It appears the world of technology is under duress at the moment. There aren't many positive headlines. Do you share that assessment?
Well, look, I think when you say it's under duress, I think to paint it all in one brush is probably not exactly right.
Okay.
And I talk a lot about it in the book, in that everybody eventually has to have a chapter 2. And I think that's what you see happening with a lot of companies. We've had chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
So I certainly learned that point of reinvention and learned about that balance of growth and efficiency that has to happen. And so to me, this is just this chapter 2. And, it can be very dangerous when somebody attacks your profit pool, as an example. But this is a bit of growing pain, and I think that's what you see happening in parts of the market.
Ginni, there was one opinion piece that I saw that caught my attention for more reasons than one. And I wanted to get your perspective on some of the criticism that has been leveled at so-called diversity, distraction on the board of SVB. What do you make of that as someone who basically thinks a lot about diversity on boards and in executive management teams?
Yeah, look, in the book, Good Power, as you saw what its name was, which I actually named in retrospect. I actually have a whole chapter I dedicated to something called Good Tech, which on one hand talks about ushering new technologies in safely, like AI, like you've had a lot of discussion about ChatGPT. And on the other side of it is this point about, I don't even use the word diversity, because to me diversity is a number, inclusion is a choice. And I always said, I lived exactly at the intersection of society and business. I need a good workforce. I authentically believe a diverse workforce is the best workforce that gives you the best products. And so I don't view this as anything other than doing what is, yes, right for society, right for a community, but right for my company and for the products and the customers. So I think it's a shame to misplace that focus on it. To me, it is all about having a better company.
And it's about culture. And at the moment, we look at the headlines coming from Meta having to lay off another 10,000. Talk to us a little bit about your experience in having to pivot business models, having to lay off people. What do you think can be done by Mark Zuckerberg?
Look, first I would say, whenever you have to lay off people, it is a very hard thing. So put that point aside, because these are real people, real families that you impact. No one likes to do it. But I think the other thing when, I just mentioned, Ed, about this is Act Two for many companies. People often think about what they do, the how they do their work. I write a lot about this in the book, is just as important, how they do it. So, in other words, you have to be more efficient, you have to do things faster, consumerism, but then also how you do it with the workforce, I think is probably the most important thing. So how tough things are done, and again, I almost think that's the subtitle of the book, which is about doing hard things, but doing them in a good way. Doesn't mean you don't do them.
I mean, Caroline, what jumps out at me is how quickly conversations change. 10 days ago, we're fixated on artificial intelligence. SVB happens, no one utters those words, and the health of the tech sector gets called into question. Where do we go with this, Caro?
I know. The focus has to return on ultimately business models on a time where interest rates go higher, you have to do more with less. Ginni, you pivoted IBM to focus in on artificial intelligence, on the rebirth of cloud. What do you make of this fascination with ChatGPT and the hype cycle that was around it?
Yeah, look, I think what it calls, this is not going to be a technology issue. This is going to be a trust issue. So I feel like I've learned so much over the last 15 years of trying to bring AI into the world. And there's all different kinds of AI. And I'm a little bit afraid this gets all brushed with one brush of ChatGPT, because while it can do some wonderful things, as I think we all already know, you can get things that are factually incorrect, but they sound authoritatively correct. So to me, what I'd love to see now, it's wonderful that everyone's thinking about AI because I think it can do so many good things. I just don't want the downside now to push it aside, which tells me that anybody, both using it, anybody, or building it, to think about the up and the down at the same time versus let's look at all the good things and then, bad things to take care of. This would be different. Now, bring it in thinking about both at once. And so, there was such an uproar on education around ChatGPT. As an example, kids can cheat on their tests. I would have loved even a small thing at the same time to have come out, which was an app that said, this might have been created by ChatGPT. Now, people are building those now, and there's discussion of watermarking. But the point is that people understand what it's good for, what it's not, how it's trained. I mean, look, it's trained by the good and bad of humanity. Now, there's other kinds of AI that you can train very carefully. So they're such good, and so this is now about, my view, building trust in that technology so we really get its benefit.